Hello everyone.
You guys have to.
So fresh morning started with some fresh topics as you are going through, and now the next talk on the subject space and logic in the domain of spirituality. And for that, I want to invite on stage Professor Sandeep Kumar, Department of Mechanical Engineering, IIT Varanasi. Please put your hands together and welcome him on the stage. And before he starts, I want to give a small introduction about him. Professor Sandeep Kumar is a professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, IIT Varanasi. Received bachelor degree from MNREC Allahabad, masters from IT BHU and PhD from IIT Delhi. His field of interest in computational mechanics, particularly finite element method and wavelets. At present, he is working on wave propagation. He has published papers in international journal in the areas of composite plates and shells, nonlinear dynamics and chaos, element-free, Galerkin method and Vection dispersion equations, etc. He is now working and has already completed various government-funded projects. So put your hands together, and again I want to welcome here Professor Sandeep Kumar. Thank you so much and enjoy.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Normally we eat something very good at the end, but here all the good lectures we are hearing in the beginning. I'll try to make it interesting. Normally I'm a very boring person. My topic is space and logic in the domain of spirituality. Space, I mean to space in a mathematical definitions. So, if you see the science, we all want in science to improve the quality of human life, but we are not always progressing in the positive direction. And religions is also used for the peace and to bring peace and cheers in the mind of people, but it often fails. So, instead of combining both science and spirituality to bring something good, I am presenting this analysis of mathematics to understand the logic of Upanishad and show the deeper logic of the ancient Indian scriptures. There are two methods to understand science. One is mathematics and other is experiment. And we both use it rigorously. So we have seen that there are many issues which cannot be resolved by experiment. We use good mathematics. So we have to understand systematically what is logic, particularly in the mathematics. And we'll see how the deep logic of deep-rooted Indian logic and compare it with the mathematics. So first, we have to define the logic. Logic normally we use to manipulate for the personal need. We tell the logic for our personal needs. That is not a scientific logic. I want this, so I will try to justify it. This is the normal process. But here, this definition, like logic is a set of statements which consists of rules and accepted observation for new finding. Means, and the rule I define, rule is a simple statement based on generalization of observation and often supported by logic, which should not be violated. This is how we define. For example, when you play chess, there are rules that this piece will move in this way, a rook will move in this straight way or straight or like that. So this is a rule. And the objective of your playing chess is to defeat the opponent. So you give your logics Okay, that's the difference between logic and rules. Rule is a simple statement, logic is a set of statements. And mathematics is the best form of rules, like theorems, proposition, and logic, the proof. So I took this quote from Russell: mathematics possesses not only truth but supreme beauty. So I just change it. I say that तर्क में ही सत्य है, सत्य ही सुंदर है. So when I say this तर्क में ही सत्य means the logic, truth lies in the logic. Truth lies in the logic. And truth is beautiful. Okay. Sati Sundar, everybody knows, so I just added something in the morning. Let us say how mathematics developed. Probably, which I imagine, people try to generalize the concept. They observe, say, one banana, one flower, one bird, and they symbolically represent something like this. And then they symbolically started representing two. So it is symbolic language. They are developing symbolic language, which we call mathematics, and is useful for quantifying ability of human mind. The mathematics initially helps in quantifying. We have some quantifying ability which probably other animals or other people do not have, species do not have, and we try to we develop this. Now, they try to extend this concept. This is what I feel. They try to, when there is a positive numbers and negative numbers, the decimal systems and operators, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, square root. And this all can be very easily proved by experimental means. You can take some small, simple examples and you can prove it. But the square root of negative numbers, you cannot prove in a simple way. There's no simple. So perhaps this is the first example which could not be easily verified in the visible world. Other things you can, operators you can verify, but not this. But we are forced to accept it as we do not have any doubt on this logic. Because this is logically correct, so we accepted it. It's not that it could be verified, so we accepted it. So probably this is the first example where the experimental proof was not existing, but we accepted it because it is logically correct. So in mathematics, often we use axioms. We accept something. And with axioms, we try to generalize the things. For example, we can measure three-dimensional space. But suppose you want to measure higher dimensional space. You cannot construct a scale. You cannot construct. So people use the axioms. And that with the help of axioms, they are able to measure the higher dimension also. It's not limited to three-dimensional. And three-dimensional becomes a very simple case of this. So axioms are used for higher dimension, not which we cannot do in the normal. So they started using some symbols and some axioms, and they define the norm, which we call norm. Similarly, they develop some symbols, define the inner product, and that is how they define the angles. Okay. Then they define the limits, Cauchy sequence, and then complete space. That it means that every sequence converges to a point. Then the complete space, they define the Banach space and the Hilbert space. This is how they do it. Means what they are doing is they are starting with the axioms, and because axiom doesn't have any limit of dimension, so they can extend to any dimension. Now, the three-dimensional Euclidean space then becomes a very simple case of infinite dimension, Hilbert space. Now, there is another interesting thing of this space concept. Normally, when we want to give some logic, the logic should be continuous. For example, when a judge hears some statements, so he observes or notices which statements are continuous. And then on that basis, he decides that this person is correct. For example, let us say some murder occurs and then they hear the culprit, they find that this culprit has the weapon, they get the weapons, then they see the motive, and then they decide that this person is a culprit. So they hear the logic and they see the continuity of the things. So in mathematics also, we see the continuity. Mathematics we accept because of the continuity. Mathematics we accept because it gives the continuity of logic. If there is a break in the continuity, mathematics doesn't accept that. For example, when the Fourier initially gave his concept of sine-cosine series, the mathematicians could not accept it because they were not able to see the continuity. They said, what is this? They said they were seeing there is some breaking of concepts. So the continuity is very important. So normally we work in C3 or C2 space, means the function is, m means derivative, the order of derivative. So Cm means the function can be differentiated m times. This is all. So when we use this, any equation we want to solve, normally we see that the function is continuous or not in this. But there are many problems where we find that function is not continuous. We cannot give the continuous function for the solution. So the Hilbert space, later they developed more generalized form that is called Sobolev space. They could develop, and that gives the weak continuity. And to understand the concept of weak continuity, you have to understand a little bit about the measure theory also, which is a generalization of what can be measured and all. So the whole concept is little complex. You have to do little exercise. But what I want to say that it is starting from axioms, creating the space, providing some kind of continuity. And in that continuity, we want to prove something, because logic becomes continuous. So Hilbert space provides many things, like basis function, ijk is also example, provides the necessary continuity, and it provides the limit, where the result will converge. After, if you put some effort, then slowly you will get some converging point. Now this is a very simple example, often we use in mechanical engineering. This problem is a little complex, and so we have to break this. Mathematicians could not conceive the concept of breaking, or splitting this domain into pieces, because they need the continuity. But the engineers have to solve the problem, so they subdivided this space, and they could got the answer. But later on, mathematicians proved that even though they are subdividing this domain, but in fact there is a continuity in the subdivision. So the continuity is very important, and the mathematician could prove it. Even engineers could do it by trial and error. Mathematician could prove that they know the logic is continuous. So this example of finite element method, where they subdivide it and they get the algebraic equation, etc. So the important point is that the mathematics validity of logic does not depend on our observation ability. We observe it, or we do not observe it, it doesn't matter. As long as it is logical and it is continuous, it is accepted. That's all. Mathematics start in the real visible world, there's no doubt. First we see, then we try to go for higher. Then axioms, we use for higher dimension, and we use the continuity. This is what again I have written, the CK continuity initially, and then we Hilbert space, etc. There is another interesting thing is that initially we drive the concept using Newton's law. The problem becomes more complex, then we use the energy principle. And when you take more complex problem, use the distribution theory, use the Sobolev spaces, there is no energy concept. The energy concept becomes a very special case of distribution theory. Okay, so you are starting from the bottom, but actually you are seeing something else, you are generalizing it. So the energy principle, you cannot be applied in a very complex problem. Okay, you have to use much more, and this distribution concept, if you see, you cannot physically demonstrate it. You get the solution, that's all. There are many things which cannot be demonstrated physically, but when you take their simple cases, the very complex cases you cannot demonstrate physically, but you take very simple cases, there you can do it, some demonstration. So, but unfortunately for many scientists, logic is meaningful as long as it provides something for experiment. And we see that as the quality of equipment improves, the understanding of physical phenomena improves, and so the technology also improves. So normally, this is what happens. Normally we see that science is progressing, is doing great job, but in fact it is adding a lot of problems also. The important fact is that only those things can be observed or experimentally verified which can be perceived by senses or its supporting instruments. So is it correct to believe that the true knowledge is one which can be perceived by senses or its supporting instrument? This is not correct. Therefore, logic is not only important for understanding what we observe, but also for understanding what we cannot observe. So, now everything depends on the logic. There are many things which we cannot demonstrate it using some experiment. Now, I am starting the question. This question is what I was before my birth and what will happen after death. I will say this is a trivial question. For many math scientists, this is a trivial question. We should not think about all these things. But in fact, the whole society is governed by this question. Okay. For example, in India, one tries to convert the other in his own religion because he thinks that by converting this way, he will become heaven. The other tries to kill the others because they belong to other religion. And in India, there many becomes monks. They are intellectual class, and they are affecting this whole society. So whole society is disturbed by jihadis, by this kind of conversion, by these monks. The whole society is disturbed. So let us think whether this question is really useful or not. So first, again, I take these axioms. Nothing is illogical in this world. Nothing is, I start with this statement, nothing is illogical in this world. So, if I see that there nothing was existing before my birth and nothing will happen after death, then probably my life becomes meaningless. Okay, then why should I live? I should commit suicide. Why should I live for 50, 60 or 100 years? Just for enjoying some few years, 50, 60 years, 70 years. So this cannot be the purpose of living. Now if I say that if I do good karmas and I get the good birth, heaven, that can also be not a good answer. Because why God selects some people, give good birth, they do good things, and others they are deprived. So this is also not a good answer to me. So what I find logically, and according to Indian philosophy, birth and death are a continuous process, and we are eternal souls, always existing. It's written in Bhagavad Gita. Birth is the result of past karmas, which we perform to find the happiness here and there. Eternal happiness lies in the perfect knowledge and perfect action. Death, which we see as a discontinuity, is a part of continuous process. According to Upanishad, we are Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. Sannyasis or monks use it as an axiom and form their space for all logic. So for sannyasis, Aham Brahmasmi is a most important axiom. In fact, this is a fundamental axiom. They do not consider themselves as a Hindu or Muslim, Indian or Pakistani. For them, all living beings are Brahman. And they never think to harm anybody. They have compassion for all. Concept of space is essential in every aspect of life we use. Space like space of army, space of strength. And we don't, even though we do not understand it properly, but we use it. So Bhagavad Gita also starts with the verse. It says the Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. Kshetra means space. For implementation of any logic, it is essential to specify its space and with the help of axioms. Ancient Indian wisdom also has a very similar structure. According to Upanishad, it's repeated, sorry. So what is Brahman? This is a very difficult question, because Brahman has an infinite dimension. Lord says, Bhagavad Gita says, only Lord understands himself by his internal potency. We cannot understand or realize the Brahman because our own nature, our own desires, our own lust, our own greed, our own envious nature, all this obstructs in realizing the Brahman concept. So the method of realizing Brahman is association with great sannyasis, those who have realized. And then you can verify it with the help of scriptures. So Brahman space is divided into two spaces, apara and para, where superior energy or para is a living being exploiting the inferior energy, that is apara. This is like earth, water, this is apara. The intersection of two spaces, para and prakriti, forms the living being. This is what written in the Bhagavad Gita. Prakriti is further divided in sattvic, tamasic, rajasic. Okay, and Bhagavad Gita says that it's important to understand Prakriti, Purusha and Godhead. Now, to apply mathematical logic on a domain such as physics, economics, we apply all these things. And we try to understand the phenomena. Some of the phenomena which are pure mathematical is like Heisenberg principle, uncertainty principle, and the DNA structure, which use the knot theory. So I have also tried to apply the concept of mathematics because I am a wavelet person. So I see that this evolution system, like for example, evolution means, according to your scriptures, initially I was some very small species, maybe a mosquito or flies, then become a goat, maybe some monkeys, and then now I have evolved to human being. So I use this concept in the wavelets. So wavelet means initially you have something, then you add on some prakriti, another space, then you add on some prakriti, another space from another space, and then you are evolving, and at present you are in this space. So it's like mathematically I want to represent like this. And the evolution of human being, it's not Darwin's concept. The scriptures concepts are different. Evolution is different. Monkey has not evolved to human being. Means I was a monkey, now I have become human being. And what I will become in the next life, it depends on my desires. Then there is another interesting thing which Bhagavad Gita expresses: mind, intelligence and ego, which I compare with the single degree vibration system, where you have a mass, damper and a spring. Mass I consider as something like ahankar or ego. Damper is like buddhi or intelligence, and spring is man or mind. So when something hits on your ego or mass, then you start acting. You start some energy. When your ego is hurt, then you start reacting, and then that gives the energy, and that energy is transformed. This body is a machine, it's transformed to some action. This is what I... So another thing which I want to emphasize is that so far we are doing experiment mainly with the non-living objects, and we are very happy with that. For example, when you make the pendulum, right, and pendulum behaves very nicely as per your expectations or whatever. So they are non-living objects, we are getting very good results. But when you see the other field like living, medical science, psychology, etc., you are not getting very good results. And in the case of spiritual science, what we believe, that we are going to deal with the higher living beings. They are not our subordinates. So we cannot expect that these subordinates will behave like a pendulum. If I hang it and then move it, so they will keep on moving. They are higher living beings. We have to follow their instructions. So that is written in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, the question is, can we understand everything using existing mathematical spaces or mathematics? So I use this chart, scientific laws. No mathematician has proved that there exists some Newton's law or thermodynamics law. It is observed. It is not proved. Then matter also, nobody proved that if you have laws and you have a mathematics, you can prove that there exists some oxygen or gold. It is observed. Then the living being also is not proved by some means. It is observed. You cannot prove that, okay, this is the matter. If I combine these matters, I'll get this living beings. You cannot prove it. So all these things we are able to observe. And we are using the mathematics. There is no doubt about it. Now, when we are talking about the absolute truth or supreme being, can we prove it by any means? We could not prove it by scientific laws, matter or living being. How can we prove these things which we cannot see also? Now, we are trying to prove the existence of God. Now, you can prove, like you use mathematics as you use in physical laws or matter or living being. You can use mathematics to understand supreme truth, but you cannot fully realize it. I hope you are getting my point. You cannot see that. You can mathematically prove that if you throw this stone, it will go like this. But what is stone? You cannot prove it. Physically you have to prove that, okay, if you throw the stone, it will go and fall in this place. But what is stone? You have to either observe it or you have to realize it. So, for the absolute truth, or the God also, partially you can get the feeling that, okay, this is the supreme truth. But you cannot get the full picture of supreme truth. You can get a part of that. So, there is a method which explains, Bhagavad Gita explains, to do experiment and get something, we have to follow their suggestion. So this effort is not again futile effort, because right now generally we say that the Bhagavad Gita and all, those who are interested, they want something beyond this life. After death, they want the good life, and so they are doing. No. You can improve this world also. That is my point. You can create a better economics, better politics, social, and in fact scientific development. So I believe that the spirituality-based science and philosophy should be developed and compared with the money-based philosophy and science. Because money-based means it is all cheating. If I am smart, I will cheat. That's all. The past failure in the spiritual effort or religion was only due to lack of fundamental understanding and adopting spirituality as per the convenience of the personal desires. Earlier, really, we have not used it properly. There were some great sannyasis, Prabhupada, Dr. T.D. Singh or Swami Vivekananda. They could understand the spirituality properly, but not the common people. Like common people, common society is governed by Brahmins, and Brahmins never say that you are Brahma, because they wanted to prove that you are Shudras, I am Brahman. So they never propagated that Aham Brahmasmi. It is the Prabhupada who tried to propagate all the time that, or Swami Vivekananda kind of thing. So this was the main fundamental problem in Indian society. Now this, you can verify, the model based on spirituality and the model based on the money, and the government, if verifies, I am sure that they will get better results when we follow this model. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And now, anyone want to ask any questions? The forum is open. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar. I have a question concerning your notion of evolutions of consciousness, where you show this different stage. Now, I am a scientist, and in terms of science, evolution means that something physical is going to proceed from one being to another. This common scientist would think of genes, for example. Certainly you don't want to imply that, but then what do you mean in terms of evolution? What is that physical things that goes from one lower being to the other?
Now, there are two things. One is that can we verify something? Like you are interested in verifying something physically or doing experiment. That, okay, this mosquito is evolving to another mosquito which is better and can resist the mosquito repellent. That is the process of your evolution concept. What I am talking about our scripture says that we are passed through some 84 lakhs species or consciousness. So what we believe, as per our tradition, that I was initially some lower kind of species who has a lower consciousness, and then evolved in the natural process. Now I have become a human being, and as a human being also probably I lived many, many lives. Today I have evolved. I am giving this lecture. Okay, earlier probably I have pulled the rickshaw also outside. So this is what scripture says, that we are evolving, and evolution is my own desire also. Once we become human being, then it is our desire what we want in our next life, how we want to enjoy the life. So this nature provides all facility. Suppose I want to enjoy in a particular way, and I have done good karmas. So nature will provide, or God has made the system, it will provide all the facility. So initial process is the evolution. You are naturally evolving, growing. And then in the human life, it's my desire, how I want to enjoy. So nature is basically providing all the facility to enjoy. We all want to enjoy, and we are enjoying. That's all. Nature is providing all facility. We have to decide how we want to enjoy. So this is the scriptures. It's not simple. I said that there are many things which you cannot prove experimentally. So what you are talking about, what you have observed in your experiments. The evolution process means some changes in the mosquito or bacteria or virus. So at that level, whatever you have observed, you have extrapolating. Now probably monkey has evolved to human being. This is what you are extrapolating. Okay. So we are not that concept of evolution. We don't have that concept of evolution.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you, sir, for your very good lecture. Sir, in your lecture, you mentioned that birth and death are continuous processes, and we are souls and we continuously exist. What does our Indian scripture says about the time when there was no life on earth? Like there was a period when we had no life, and now we are having life. Where did that start from?
You have seen only Earth. Have you seen all the planets?
So I'm talking about the past phase of Earth.
Okay.
As science
But how
predicts.
can you say that probably we were existing in some other planet? Who knows? You have not seen. You have seen a very specific part. Okay. When you have seen a very specific part, you cannot generalize it. If you extrapolate it, if you see this much and you extrapolate it to this much, then you will be totally wrong. So you have to believe in something. If you see this much, you see what the higher space is saying, and you justify when you see whether the higher space, whatever higher space is saying, this in that space this much is also correct or not. You have to see this thing. You cannot extrapolate. First you see the higher space, and if you want to test some small space, you can test in that small space. That is possible. But if you see a small space and you try to extrapolate to higher space, this is absurd, totally absurd. So first you see the higher space, then you try to see just whether this, whatever higher space is saying, that small space is valid, it is valid in the small space.
And sir, in your lectures, you also told that we are evolving from some lower consciousness to higher consciousness. So in your view, we are souls and we had lower consciousness also. Then what about the microorganisms? Like, do you
They
think
have
they
also consciousness. I think Vasudev Prabhu and all those, they can give you the better answer. I know little bit. So probably I'm not very right person, but they have also the consciousness. Next lecture you will listen.
Yeah, thank you. One more question?
Yes, excuse me, sir. Yes, you had a very good presentation and attractive presentation. But insofar as you are at the beginning of your talk, you just introduced that how logic is instrumental in determining culpability of an accused and offender. Logic, most particularly logic, is essentially instrumental in determining the culpability of an accused or an offender.
Okay.
Yes, because we are depending on empirical evidence. The testimonies of the witnesses advanced in the court of law, etc. And psychology is involved in order to determine the motive or intention of the accused or offender. But you just introduced that how logic is essentially an instrumental facet in determining the culpability of an accused.
The logic uses the facts, rules, observations, everything it uses. I said the logic doesn't mean that it just only rules. When you observe something, logic means it is a set of statements which consists of facts, rules. Okay, so you have logic, your logic will be based on facts also. So whatever facts is observed and what is the rule says, what is the motive, psychological rule says. Psychology also forms some rules. Or you can say, so the psychological rules, the facts, then your own logic, that decides whether the person is culprit or not. Okay, so that is what I say. Logic doesn't mean that only set of rules. Logic means observation of facts also.
So that's all. So what is the basic difference between logic and the fact and a statement?
Logic is a set of statements consisting of rules, facts, etc., which you want to achieve some objective or goal. For example, I said the chess. Okay, chess, you want to defeat someone using your logic. And there are rules. Rules is that rook will move in this way, bishop will move in this way. That's the rule. So theorem, proposition, all are rules. Your psychological statements, they are all rules, you can say. Rules, might some rules I'm using for the general purpose, not for specific theorems or proposition or lemma. Okay.
But motive is a psychological aspect.
So this is
That is determined
again
on basis of testimonies and evidence, direct evidence of the witnesses. Here logic doesn't have a significant role so far as
motive is also, from my point of view, motive is also a part of type of rule. Is a type of rule. Motive is also a type of rule. It is psychological rule. It's not a mathematical rule. It is a type of rule.
Yeah, thank you so much. And now I'd like to request to go for the next. Yeah.
Because we are having one more question.
Okay, one more question. The last question.
Sandeep, this presentation was very simple and very interesting. I have one question. What is this discontinuity in logic? I mean, little bit continuity and discontinuity. That is one question. And second thing is, I find that your whole presentation, so the two parts, there is also little discontinuity, I felt, because, this, what is required is basically putting in a mathematical framework, different kinds of other things which you are talking about, the spiritual concepts and the psychological concept. There is a need. I mean, there is nothing, any problem in the presentation, but that vacuum is inherent there. And I think it's a very big, opportunity for all of us to sit down and, try to work out, how to put in a very axiomatic and logical and mathematical framework the psychological traits, or let's say from the three modes from the Vedantic concept and the entire, structure. And some inspiration we can draw from astrological concepts also. You'll see these different planets, they are like personality traits, and there are rules. Like if they sit, in one house together, then there will be problems. Because that's also a kind of an axiom. But if we can try to, the human traits, psychology and spiritual concepts, if we can really put it in a, that's where is a need. And anyway, regarding the discontinuity logic, we can discuss later also. I think the time.
I just want to say one thing. First, we have to decide the universal space. And the universal space is coming from the axiom that Aham Brahmasmi. The rest of the things are all part of subspaces. Okay. So first, we convince everybody that this is the axioms which provides the universal space. Then rest of the thing we can solve.
So I'm saying that rather than trying to convince, you start with that and develop the whole axiomatic structure, the whole theory. And then we convincing is a different part, but let's develop the whole, the structure based, in axiomatic manner.
Yeah.